Many of the opening betting lines for the 2024 college football slate, which has the opportunity to be something special. I mean, you got Texas and Oklahoma. You got kind of the two superpower conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. You got the 12-team playoff. I know there were a lot of people that are against this change, but I think it's going to be something incredible. The kind of matchups you're getting throughout the regular season are just second to none. I mean, just things we would have never even in our wildest dreams. If you had cooked up as a kid on 2015 NCAA a schedule, you probably wouldn't have cooked up a schedule as good as some of these. Georgia, obviously the postseason favorites to win the national championship, has a ton of good matchups, including an opening one against Clemson. I think that's going to be in the Mercedes-Benz Georgia Dome, the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. They are almost 2 touchdown favorites against Clemson, 13.5. And frankly, just the way Kirby Smart gets his boys ready for those big games at the beginning of the season, it almost seems like it's not enough.
I don't think 14 is enough, and it has less to do with Clemson, I think, than Georgia in my mind, where I sit. Clemson still recruits well, certainly not as well as they used to in the pre-transfer portal era when Clemson was really winning national championships under Dabo. It really has nothing to do with Clemson because they're still going to be a formidable opponent for a lot of teams in the country. They'll probably win the ACC or at least compete with Florida State. It has everything to do with Georgia. And the fact is that they didn't graduate a lot of talent or, send a lot of talent to the NFL draft. And they're returning their best player in Carson Beck, who is primed to kind of solidify his place as the number 1 quarterback to go in next year's draft. And I think he's going to be on that sort of revenge hell tour where it's like, hey, I'm here. And that's what it boils down to for me, because Georgia still recruits out the butt. They're still the best team in terms of talent. But Clemson isn't that far behind. They're not like in a different tier completely. What it boils down to is just UGA's sights are set higher than Clemson's are. Their goal is to win a national championship and not lose a game on the way there. They're different teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now with Clemson, I don't know how you trust their offense. They've had to replace quarterbacks and Venables, Tony Elliott, and stuff like that, and they just haven't been able to figure out their offense since Trevor Lawrence has left. They've had plenty of recruits. They have 5-star quarterbacks. It just hasn't worked out. And I think when you look at Georgia's defense opening up against that defense, it doesn't get much easier. I do always am hesitant to talk about the whole revenge tour thing because I think Georgia's the new Alabama. And it seemed like every time we talked about Alabama on these revenge, it seemed like when Alabama won a national championship, it was when kind of people were like down on them, at least later in their tenure. When they had like the Bryce Young returning after a Heisman and not winning a natty, everyone thought it was going to be, oh yeah, they're just going to walk over everyone. They lose 3 games that year. So
it feels like Kirby has a different grip on his program than Saban.
Without a doubt right now, but we have to see. I'm just like, I'm always hesitant to talk about the revenge tour.
It just feels like they're going to hit the ground running. It doesn't matter. They're going to steamroll everyone.
I think whether it was Saban's Alabama or Kirby's Georgia, that first game, I feel bad for their opponent every time. Yes. I just like it. Yeah. It usually is ugly.
It's going to be
and
bad.
It gets ugly quick. You think about Oregon,
and it doesn't have anything to do with Clemson. It's just Georgia is that good.
You just think about these games just over the years. I mean, USC, Alabama, Alabama, Wisconsin, Georgia, Oregon, like when you meet them opening week, and that's not it is kind of a neutral site because Clemson is close to Atlanta. They're about equidistant, and Clemson has a great fan base.
They travel, yeah. It's going to be orange and red in there.
Yeah, I agree. There could be, but I don't know, dude. Sometimes I think fans though know what's about to happen. I don't know how many Clemson fans are going to be eager to buy tickets, and I know Georgia fans will pack that house because that is a home away from home for them. Next biggest game, I think this is week 3, Alabama. They're 4.5-point favorites going on the road to Tuscaloosa. This one, I don't know how you can't be the most intrigued. This might be the most intriguing game of the season because you don't have Saban there anymore. Does that mean that the Alabama curse that they've really had on Georgia? I mean, Kirby's 1-5, 1-6 against the University of Alabama. Is that now gone? Well, we're going to find out very soon because early in the season, they go to Tuscaloosa to face a really talented Alabama team that has Jalen Milroe, one of the best college quarterbacks in the country. They're going to hear all the noise. They're going to be able to play the underdog card. It's going to be an absolute madhouse in Alabama for that game because the fans have heard all the noise. Like Alabama finally has, what every SEC team has now had against them. they have a reason to go out there and be just absolutely a wild fan base and not know if they're going to win or lose. And there's something about that is so special and so unique when it comes to these atmosphere that Alabama lost for so long. Now they got Georgia coming in after all the noise, being the legitimate underdog. No Saban. That place is going to be a madhouse.
Yeah, Kalen, we're not going to have to wait long to see, if Kalen DeBoer is the real deal. At Washington, he had less talent than Oregon every time they played. He had less talent than Texas when they played, beat both of those two, 3-0 against those two teams. That many Alabama fans wanted those two coaches, Dan Lanning and Sark. And now Kalen DeBoer's your guy, and he's this heralded offensive genius who obviously got Michael Penix, runner up to the Heisman. They got him all the way to the Natty. Rome Odunze is a top 10 pick. 3 other first-round picks from Washington on the offensive side of the ball. What is he going to do for that Alabama offense? That, spun its wheels for the majority of last season. It did figure it out near the end, talking about Milroe getting his feet involved. We'll see kind of what DeBoer wants to do there. I think Georgia's going to, really just steamroll most of the SEC. I really do believe that. They're just, again, the revenge tour type thing. I do think DeBoer and Alabama is going to surprise some folks this year because it's not like there was just this mass exodus to the transfer portal. Did they lose talent? Undoubtedly. The Caleb Downs saga, all that stuff. There's no – but, folks, this is – just like I was talking about Clemson, this is Alabama. This is still one of the most talented rosters in the country. This will be a big test for DeBoer. I think he'll be up for it.
Yeah, I think 4.5 points
is a lot.
That's too many points for me.
That's a lot.
That's too many points for
me.
I
would take Bama, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Carson Beck, he has not had the best performances on the road over his entire career. I know it's been a short career, but he hasn't had the best performance. Now, he's made big plays. You think back to that Auburn game, but they didn't let necessarily.
I don't know.
Yeah, but no, he made some big time throws in that game, but not necessarily like on the road last year. Georgia did not look like world beaters. We'll see if that changes this year. I'm going to skip over Auburn. They're going to kill Auburn. I don't even need to say that. Texas -1.5 at Texas. They are favored in this game. This is one of the game of the seasons. I mean, you get to go at Alabama, at Texas. If you're a traveling Georgia Bulldog, you're going to have a hell of a season this year, which is something that they've missed. They haven't had these great schedules. And the great thing about it is with the 12-team playoff, you don't have to sweat like you're going to die. If you lose one of these games, you're going to be just fine. But it's still going to be awesome, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be fun, and don't let anyone try to tell you differently.
I'm a little lower on Texas. It has nothing to do with any of the players except one, and it's the most important player. It's Quinn Ewers. I'm not as high on Quinn Ewers as some other people are. I think he could get benched this year in a similar dynamic that we saw at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler, where it was like, this guy, Arch Manning, he's just too good and you're not really performing. And I think this Georgia game could really be that, focal point where we see a big change in Austin. And I just think, 1.5, I think is pretty indicative of what Vegas thinks. These are pretty even teams, except it's in Austin. They think Georgia is a much better team than Texas.
I think this is too small. I think Georgia's
going to go in there and kill them.
I think they're going to go in there and beat that butt.
Yeah,
I really do think they're going to beat their ass. I like Georgia a lot in this game. This also comes after the Red River rivalry, so it will be interesting to see what happens in that game. Not to say that Texas will be up for this game. There's no way they couldn't be up for it. A home game against probably the number one team in the country coming into your building. I just think Georgia's a much better team. I think they have the better coach. And
Texas just lost a lot of their best players too.
Winning on the road is tough, but I trust Kirby Smart. He's able to.
We were at the LSU Texas game in 2019, and it's not like Texas can't pack out a stadium and make it a raucous environment.
It's going to be crazy. Yeah. The other two games I want to talk about on this list: Ole Miss at Ole Miss. Georgia's now a touchdown favorite. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
obviously they just came off that smacking of them at Athens, but this is a much different scenario. I think you have a better team in Ole Miss. You have a more experienced team in Ole Miss. Jackson Dart coming. There's going to be that revenge play. They're going to be at home. That place, I think Ole Miss is one of the worst environments in the SEC, but they'll try to make it as raucous as they possibly can.
You can hear a pin drop in Vaught Hemingway. It is a joke of an SEC stadium. We went to LSU, so we'll never concede that we had the best tailgating. It's a joke. The Grove is a joke. I do like Ole Miss's team this year. I do think Lane Kiffin and them are going to get into the postseason. But I do think that Georgia's just going to come in there and do like they always do to these kinds of teams, and they're going to bully them in the trenches. I don't care what Ole Miss did in the portal and added beef on the line of scrimmage. It's just different when you're bringing in these kids from high school. You get your hands on them like a ball of clay like they do in Athens and turn these men into refrigerators in the trenches. It's just different.
Yeah, but I also think it's different styles too. I mean, Lane Kiffin, I think, is more built for the portal, while I think Kirby and guys like Saban are more built to build guys up and develop them. I don't know if they have quite the same developmental staff that you have at the University of Georgia.
So close.
That's what I'm saying. So I think there's almost an advantage for guys like
Kiffin
them to go.
Credit in the transfer portal, but I don't think it's enough is my point.
Yeah, 7 points is a lot, though, on the road. Obviously going to be a raucous, and as I said, revenge spot after what happened where they were embarrassed last year. The other one, 17.5 at home against Tennessee. Georgia's obviously owned Tennessee of late, but I like Tennessee
Tennessee this year.
17.5 is just a lot. I mean, at home, there's no way I'm picking Tennessee to win this game. Obviously, things can change over the course of the season. Tennessee could turn out to be a world better, but I like Tennessee this year. I think they're going to surprise. I think they could be one of those SEC playoff teams we're talking about the end of the year that not a lot of people are talking about preseason. Their quarterback, I'm going to try to say it, Iamaleava or Iamaleava. I don't know.
Yes.
It's spelled like Iamaleava, which I think is great for the transfer portal because if they struggle, I'm going to leave you. But anyways, I think that's a lot of points. I think just based off if I don't want to – if the Tennessee quarterback is as good as I think he's going to be, that should be a game where he can at least keep it relatively close. Obviously, I'll pick Georgia to win preseason, but I think that's a lot of points.
I like Josh Heupel.
Love Josh Heupel.
Offensively, you have to. And like you said, I am also high on this Tennessee quarterback who I'm not going to butcher his name. And I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Heupel because you just saw what he did 2 years ago with a much less talented quarterback, So who's to say, once he finally gets his hands on that 5-star recruit, the first 5-star quarterback Tennessee's had in a decade maybe, what can they really do there? And I think Tennessee's going to be a force to be reckoned with, but it's going to be a similar, team as it was 2 years ago where they can score a lot of points but couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Yeah, Tennessee's they're probably my surprise team. Like a lot of people, everyone's talking about.
What's crazy to me is we're looking at this, and Florida is only 5 points or 6-ish points bigger of a spread than Tennessee, and that's crazy. That's absolutely
neutral
crazy.
Site.
I don't care. That's crazy.
That's the only reason.
Florida sucks. That's crazy.
Yeah, Florida's going 4-8 this year, guys. Billy Napier should have been out that door. I've been preaching that to the choir for years, and they're late to the party.